Welcome, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your producer and host of the show, Dr. Lino Martinez. This is your motivational podcast of people's incredible journeys. Oh, yeah, let's do this. Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I would love to welcome Jenny Drennan, is a certified educational therapist, founder of WeThrive Learning, and featured speaker. As a neurodiverse, Black, Indigenous, person of color, BIPOC educator, she brings a unique perspective to her practice and discussions. Her private practice specializes in supporting students with ADHD and math and language processing challenges. Drawing on best practices and the latest research, WeThrive Learning provides one-on-one tailored support for students and parents globally while considering their complex learning profiles. Her passion, work, and insights have earned her recognition as one of MSN's top 10 most influential educators, and she is here on A Little Less Fear podcast. So nice to meet you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Lino. I'm really excited to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, I love that we're both educators here. I'm a professor myself, and I've got plenty of students that are neurodiverse or have claimed to have ADHD, and a lot of them question, what is ADHD? How do I know if I actually really do have ADHD? And so we've had plenty of these type of discussions, especially when I'm teaching psychopharmacology, and we're talking about these different types of medications used and throughout history, what they've been used for. And things like that. But before we get there, what brought you to be in your passionate field to where you are at today?
So I'm a former teacher. First, I was a business, so I did a lot of advertisement and realized this isn't my passion, and so completely turned completely went back to school and changed my career path. Became a teacher, and I've always loved teaching, being around students and kids. And then working as a teacher, I met another educational therapist who was working with students in my classroom, and we collaborated a lot on the support we were giving the kids. And so she introduced me to this field, which I don't think is very well known. And I went full on, I started learning everything there was about it, went back to school, got certified, and that's what brought me here. But I think it was also the reason I was drawn so much to it was I struggled with learning growing up. My parents are immigrants from El Salvador. I was an English language learner, and so being able to teach someone ways of learning to make it easier for them was something I was captivated by.
So basically, because you had gone through it and you knew how the challenges that you faced coming from El Salvador, correct?
Yeah.
And the learning difficulties that you had, this kind of just sprung into action one of your passions. Like, you kind of just pushed you towards the path and like, this is where I want to be because I've been there.
Yeah, so I knew what it felt like for them to struggle, for people to not get them. And then working in it, I realized I was naturally drawn to the quote unquote resistant students, right? And so the pattern was all of them had ADHD. And so I really went down a rabbit hole, learned everything there was about ADHD, and realized I have ADHD, but in the BIPOC community, it's not really recognized as much at that time. And so I went undiagnosed until my 30s.
Before we continue with ADHD, how do you define it?
So there is the medical way of defining it, right? It's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is what the term is. However, when we say it's a deficit of attention, it makes it seem like they don't have the ability to
Right, or
be
the
attentive.
capacity to even
Yes.
be attentive.
Exactly. I like to say that it is an overabundance of attention. We have an overabundance of attention, and it's hard for us to manage where we want that attention to be focused on. So it's kind of like I like to use the analogy of opening a lot of drawers in your wardrobe and leaving them open, and you're not closing any of them. So you're just opening, opening, opening. And so that's what the brain feels like. There's just thoughts going, going, going.
And when thoughts are going and going and going with because there's an abundance of attention, meaning there's a lot that you want to get done and a lot that interests you at the same time. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think yeah, definitely those two, right? We want to get a lot done when we remember. There's a lot of impulsivity. So, you could be making your way down to the fridge to pull out some milk, and then on the way, like see your phone or something and completely get distracted and derailed from what you were initially going to do. So, you think of a thought and your mind just goes straight there. So it could be worries a lot. We worry a lot because we always feel pretty scattered, like where am I supposed to be? Am I missing a meeting right now? Um, or because we think, even the younger ones, mostly the younger kids, but feel like they're about to get in trouble. Someone's about to say no, my teacher's going to get mad. My mom's going to come back and be upset with the way I did this. So I think it's a lot of worries with wanting to get things done, with not doing enough, with quote unquote procrastinating, knowing what you need to do, but leaving it till the end. So there's just a lot of thoughts.
Where do these worries come from?
Again, like I think it's being scattered, like not knowing where you're supposed to be in time, not feeling like you've lost a sense of control, basically.
Mhm.
You probably should be doing something, but you can't think about what to do, or you know exactly what to do, but the executive function skills that it requires to get it done is too overwhelming to even get started, right?
That makes sense. And if there's a feeling of loss of control to get something done, then there's most likely a feeling of loss of time as well.
Yeah, stress, right? It's worry,
Yeah.
it's anxiety. Yep. And then in addition, always feeling like you're always like, like a prickly pear, always feeling like someone's going to say no to you or come at you and be upset with you for something.
So then in turn, you feel like you're walking on eggshells.
Correct. Yes, exactly.
Wow,
And
that
so,
sounds really stressful, Jenny. My goodness. So then, okay, so then you recognize that you had these components.
Mhm.
You had some of these features, some of these symptoms of ADHD. And when did you feel like for sure this is the clear definition for me? And what did you do about that?
So I went to go see a psychiatrist to get diagnosed because growing up, in my household, my parents used to always say, "Tienes hormigas en los pantalones," which means,
You
you
got
had
ants
ants
in
in
your
your pants.
pants. Yeah.
Exactly. They didn't understand why I was always on the go, and being impulsive isn't, or being hyper isn't a doesn't necessarily have like is not a characteristic of ADHD all the time. So there are different types of ADHD. There's the hyperactive type, then there's the inattentive type, right? So where it can seem like you're paying attention to everyone and everything. And, in class, I always had really good report card comments because I played the part really well.
Sure.
But at home, I was just bouncing off the walls. My parents put me in gymnastics and track and all sorts of things to kind of get my energy out. And so, yeah, fast forward as an adult, saw a psychiatrist. They did some testing. So typically the testing is done is a good psychiatrist, I think, would do like some computer testing, some like puzzles, things to kind of see how your brain is wired.
Mm.
Now I think they're the research is showing, you probably know more, but with like MRI scans of what the brain's going, fMRI scans of the brain to see where the energy's going. And then they'll also give questionnaires to you and somebody else to complete.
Yes, I have seen some of these studies where the energy is going. A lot of the times it's all over the place. And
Yes,
one thing will spark attention somewhere else on a different part of the brain. So
yes,
it's lights, a lot of different lights flashing rather than it kind of
exactly.
staying in one little area.
Exactly. It's just never off.
And so then right. And so then when you realize this that you were going through this, how did you get help? How did you receive help or how do you feel about it now?
Being an ADHD coach for students, I think it's been, really helpful. I love learning about it, love learning strategies. So I had a coach myself for a little bit last year, which, made a world of a difference. But in supporting students, my husband's also diagnosed with it, but in supporting students and in living with him, it's been really eye-opening to see myself and others
Hmm.
and to be able to connect with them, feel like I understand, can
Yeah.
understand, see them for who they are.
Right.
That's been really nice. And then my husband, who's really understanding, will also, point things out where I'm not as aware of what I'm doing.
Yeah. And you probably do the same with him, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you help each other out.
Yeah, which is really nice, actually.
That is really nice.
Frustrating at times because we both have it, and so we know we have our challenges at the same time, but really nice as well.
And so this is really incredible. I mean, I'm really happy for you that you're able to take what your experience and take that into the educational world and help children, especially BIPOC population, because this population is unaware of what they can do to even have any type of harmony or even any type of stability or even any type of understanding. How do you take this into the minority population and how do you explain it to them in simple terms?
Yeah, so there's a lot of I would say it's important for us to destigmatize what the
It
stigmas that.
really is. Yeah.
Yeah, because, in the BIPOC community, medication is frowned upon, getting support, mental health support is frowned upon. We value resilience, overcoming adversity. And so, we're just man up and do it, right? Or if you're a woman, it's like you got to just take care of yourself, act a lot more independent and take care of others. So I go to schools with one of my colleagues, Ashley, and so we give presentations at school to the BIPOC community about this ADHD, and not just ADHD, but destigmatizing also dyslexia, dyscalculia, different learning challenges. And then we'll also, we go to parent groups. So we're a big part of CHAD, which is the ADHD, Children's of ADHD like organization. So we'll do a lot of work there, but and with students who are in our program, I'm Spanish speaking, so I can speak to the families about this. But it's really important for them to see their child, because oftentimes they have misconceptions of what's going on or get upset for the way the child's behaving. We've had a lot of times actually where children will come in and they're misdiagnosed with depression or anxiety when it's probably ADHD, or they're seeing a doctor for physical ailments because that's what the kids will, I have a stomach ache, I have a headache because of all the stress that they're under.
Right, right.
Whereas there's something, that's causing that. So let's get to the root
Right.
cause of the issue. And families don't always know or, can spot what it
No,
is.
they don't. And then kids, I mean, they can firsthand tell you when they're not feeling well, when something on them physically isn't well. But if we're not educated, what's causing some of this discomfort? I mean, how are we even gonna be active to even create change for them or even an
Exactly.
understanding? And so, how are parents reacting when you're explaining this to them? I can imagine a lot of the time, especially coming from other country, like they've never heard this before. So, how
Yeah.
do you make it easy for them to understand what ADHD is, or any of neurodivergence or dyslexia? I mean, how do you make this easy for them to understand that it's actually not abnormal?
Right. So we tell them it's beyond, like, they're not willingly acting or behaving like this, right? That it's beyond their will and they have no control over it. And so as the child matures, right, as the brain develops, they can start being much more aware of what they're doing. Especially with the right type of support, I think we can really see a lot of transformation and change within the child. But I like to tell, just to put it into context for parents, is that ADHD it has so many gifts, right? Because how the brain is wired,
Mhm.
some of the most creative people, like the
Oh yeah.
leaders a lot have ADHD. Once you find your thing, your passion,
Right.
and you're spearheading that field, right? Because you're
Yeah.
so captivated, you're engrossed by
Right.
it. So it's fun for you. So you can stay up work for 12 hours and not even realize that time has passed, right?
Right.
So it could be a really good gift if we nurture it in a good way. It still has its challenges, but I like to tell parents that the prefrontal cortex, which is the area behind the brain, is our brain develops from back to front, right? And so, I mean, I'm telling your audience because I know you know this.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Go on.
But so the prefrontal cortex is one of the last parts of the brain to develop. And so in neurotypical brains, it develops around 25, 30-year-olds, right? For someone who has ADHD, we're always 30% behind developmentally in some executive function skills. And not all the time, but in some settings, right? Depending on stress, all these things that are happening to us. So for a child to be a 15-year-old male, for example, he can act and look physically like a 15-year-old, right? So we expect him to act like a 15-year-old. But cognitively, his brain is at the age of chronically of like a 10-year-old, right? If we're saying they're 30% behind their same age peers. So in some ways, he is going to act like a 10-year-old
Mhm.
sometimes. And so that
That
just puts
makes
it into
sense.
context so that we can support them, right?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And also gives a sense of compassion too,
Yes,
which is
exactly.
beautiful. I mean, we need compassion. We definitely
Yeah.
need it.
So
Yeah, because of all the stigma. I mean, they're probably being, and this, and it, I start to think just like ancestrally, like how often this has been going on generations after generations, but because it's been tucked under, people aren't getting the attention they need to even evolve in their current brain to even help it. Because if you're not helping it, or you're not allowing it to develop the way that that specific brain is supposed to develop, then you're stunting what could be.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so true. We're stunting what could be. People are changing their narrative about themselves, right? Because they have this misunderstanding of who they are. They blame themselves for a lot. So I think when people understand what they're going through, they can begin to learn how to manage it because now they have words tied to it, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I love what you were saying earlier about how once they can actually find what they can go off 12 hours straight with, like whatever they're passionate about, whatever
Yeah.
ignites their fire, then it ends up being a gift.
Yes.
And we end up needing people with ADHD in our lives. I'm like, hey, I need you. I need you to help me with my, I don't know, with my Instagram feed. I mean, you're great at this. Help me out. You're good with colors. You're good with this, with your attention to detail on here that I'm not. So, I mean, then
Yeah.
that's what creates a really healthy space.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, there's some of the most creative. Like I always tell a parent, if you have a problem that you need to solve, like give it to your kid. Like they will figure it out.
Happily, too.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this. And so you have some strategies for creating an ADHD friendly learning environment at home. Can we talk about some of these strategies?
Yeah. So I know your guess, range, the age group range. So I'll share some strategies I think that would be helpful for a lot of people.
Oh, okay, great.
One I think would be like it's time management, right? That's something
Yeah.
ADHDers really struggle with because
Yeah.
time is so abstract, it's not concrete. And so right now our world is used to digital clocks, right? Like so I have one on my computer, we have it on our phone, the microwave, the stove. Digital clocks, though, only tell us the present time. And so we want to see time pass, right? So back in the day, we had analog clocks. And so now we've gotten rid of those. And so kids are not seeing time pass, they're just seeing the present time. So in order for them to really internalize
Wow.
what it feels like to have time, right? We need to see time pass, like the minutes, the hours, the hands move. And that way they can see past, present, and future time. And so I think
Wow.
I think having an analog clock in every room where we spend time in, one being the bathroom too, like when we're getting ready in the morning, is super important. Um, then so we need to externalize as much time as possible to be able to internalize it. So, paper calendars, anything that where we can see time is, even if we're not using it, would be helpful. Sometimes we onboard students that are in middle school, late middle school, and they do not know like the months of the calendar, the sequence of the months, because it's just they don't have calendars in their house. It's just not a thing anymore. We're all digital now.
Wow, this is so fascinating, Jenny. Holy moly. So, because time management is so crucial and important, and digital clocks, which is this day and age, I mean, things are instantaneous and trying just to keep us like currently what's going on right in front of your face, you lose track of what you're supposed to do because things aren't moving forward. They're just staying in one spot. So if we can
Exactly.
actually see that time is moving forward and that there was also past time, then we're able to have more sense of a direction.
Yeah, we can kind of, it becomes a little more concrete, right? We can start to feel what a minute feels like. Oh, 5 minutes have passed and I thought it was only 1 minute. Especially for someone who has, or anyone who's like really focused on something that they're doing. A minute, I mean, 10 minutes might feel like 2 minutes to that person because their brain is so stimulated, right?
Sure, sure,
Whereas when
sure.
we're bored, a minute feels like forever.
Oh yeah.
So having that analog clock, you can see the time move more.
Wow, that's so amazing. I love this. So what are some what's another way? I love this.
Okay, so another strategy I think is, oftentimes, and we see this with adults and kids all the time, but they'll have this, they have a plan, but the plan or the routine that they want to set is so intricate, right? So it's so detailed. They've carved it all out and they've worked really hard on it, but then it's too complex to maintain, right? Like in a perfect world, yes, we would do that, color code, highlight, do this, put
Sure.
everything away where it's supposed to. But I think the most easy and the fastest way we can do something for someone who has ADHD, it's much
Mhm.
more likely to stick. So the whatever strategy or tool we're using needs to be easy and it needs to be fast. So just as an example, for example, a hamper, right? If your hamper's in the closet and you have the door closed, it might seem like, oh, it's just a couple of feet away, right? But to get there, there's a lot of obstacles. You got to get up, you got to open the door, toss it in the hamper. Maybe the hamper has a bin, so a bin lid. So there's a lot going on. So, but if you can just toss your clothes in the hamper, that's a lot easier, right? We've
Sure.
removing a lot of obstacles. So the easiest and the most and the fastest strategy is going to be sustainable versus, something much more intricate.
So fast, easy, and sustainable.
Yeah, equal sustainable. Yeah.
Okay, fast and easy equals sustainable. And simple because it's simple.
Exactly. So yeah, and it just takes up less mental energy to execute, right? And so we want to conserve all the mental energy we have. So let's make it a habit, a routine, make it fun so that it can stick.
I love this, making it fun. Because with anything, if you make it fun, it's gonna stick.
Yeah, exactly. And for everyone, fun looks different, right? So this is where the
Right.
coaching comes in because then we got to play with, figure out, okay, well, what's fun to you and how can we make it more fun?
Because of the different personalities. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. Yeah.
And different age groups.
Yes.
Wow, this is really fascinating. And so what kinds of changes have you seen your the children you work with make? What kind of changes have you seen and their families?
Oh, so helpful. So, families will come and no fault to parents, right? Parents are really well intentioned. And, I was a teacher myself and I used to do this all the time, but telling kids what to do, right? Directing kids because we're so used to it. We see them as little, as, we know better because we've lived this before. So we're going to tell you what to do so you don't have to make the mistakes that I'm making,
Right.
right? So we're trying to quote unquote save them. We're rescuing, right?
Right.
Um, for someone, I think for all kids, but especially for those who have ADHD, the more we tell them what to do, the more they will push back, right? Because especially as they're turning into their teenage years, they're trying to separate themselves from their parents. And developmentally, that's really healthy, right? They're becoming their own person, practicing their own decision-making skills, problem solving. We want them to do that because the brain strengthens what it uses. And if we're solving or deciding everything for them, they won't gain that practice,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah. And so we want them to do that. However, oftentimes if we tell them what to do, they will push the other way, even if they know that what you're suggesting is the best idea or the best
Sure.
advice, right?
Plus, they're already on overload, and then you're telling them to do something, and they're like, "Hang on a minute, whoa, wait, slow down."
Exactly. Or like we're really, encouraging them or telling them you should probably take a math class this summer. No one's I'm not gonna run a marathon just because I think it's good for me, right? I need to
Sure.
actually want to run the marathon. And if
Yeah, that
someone's
makes sense.
forcing me to, I'm really not gonna want to run the
Oh
marathon.
no, no way. Yeah, definitely. It's gonna create a resistance, that's for sure.
Exactly. So I think with parents, with our families, it's been really helpful to sort of teach them like not to be a coach at home, but coaching techniques that they can use so that, we alleviate the tension at home and restore the relationship they have with their child. Because ultimately we want them, they're the most important person in their child's life. So we want them to have a really close relationship, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, but in those teenage years, we see them really butt heads a ton. And so our work here is really to kind of restore that for them, coach the student. But we also teach the parents like to understand the child and ways of communicating with the child so that the child is much more receptive to the advice or the suggestions, right? So we'll
Right.
teach parents coaching techniques. For students, I think what's been so helpful has been teaching them how to believe in themselves, right? To
Mhm.
trust themselves,
Yeah.
advocate for themselves, like to get to know themselves.
Mhm.
For us, before a kid goes to college, they need to really understand who they are, be really self-aware of their strengths and their challenges so they can ask for what they need and capitalize on their strengths in areas that are challenging, right? So they
Mhm.
need to really understand themselves. And then also for them to be able to use strategies. So sometimes parents will come to us and say they need to start using a planner. I tell parents, your child's not going to use a planner. I've never seen a child use a handwritten planner in all the years we've been doing this, right? Every child is different. So what we really want them to do is to figure out a way to remember what they need to do when they need to do it. Whatever tool they use is up to them, right? So a planner might work for some people, calendar might work for for other people,
Yeah,
Google
but not work
Tasks
for
might
someone
work.
else.
Like, yeah, we got to figure out the tool that works for them. So I think it's not being so tied to the tool, just like what's the main goal here, and then figuring out which tool the child wants to use.
Yeah, definitely. I love what you said here about teaching students to trust themselves so that they can capitalize on their own personal tools, the things that they're good at. How do you begin to figure out what their strengths are? How do you, was it like a question? You kind of just start asking them specific questions?
It's we can, right? We
Mhm.
find a lot of times our kids are really, some of them are really self-aware, others of them are not. We observe a ton, so we'll highlight what we're noticing the child is doing well, celebrating things that maybe no one has in the past. We really focus on celebrating progress here, right? So we're not going to tell a child, you're smart. We're going to tell them, you really you focus so hard on this problem. You tried three different strategies until you got to your answer. Right.
Mhm.
So we're telling them what they're doing well so they continue to do more of that and start recognizing all the good that they're doing so that they can do more of it because they don't realize what they've done, right? They're little. So we got to hold up that
Right.
mirror for them.
And I can feel that that's really for all age groups with struggling with this. If you tell them all what they're doing well at, then most likely they'll keep progressing towards that because you're
Exactly.
celebrating them at that point.
Exactly. It's like when my husband does the dishes, I'll just say, thank you. I acknowledge what he's done so he can do more of it. It's positive reinforcement, but in
Yeah.
a in a strategic way.
Right, it really is. And so is this also are these some of the techniques that you tell parents to utilize with their kids or with their
Yeah.
parents or whoever? You
Yeah.
tell them what they're doing, like acknowledge what they're doing well at and kind of just guide them towards that.
Yeah, I think, the kids feel, again, because they're teenagers, right? They feel like parents are only recognizing the bad that they're doing, what they're not doing, right? And so we teach parents, one of the strategies we teach them is celebrating, acknowledging your child. So let's say a child has 10 missing assignments per week, but this week they only have 5. That's progress. We need to
It
celebrate
is.
that.
Right.
Like, yes, it's not zero, probably where the parent would like it, but it's important for the child to see that we're noticing the effort that they're putting in so that, okay, maybe next week we're down to 4 missing assignments instead, right? So, if they're late to class or have 4 tardies, if they only got 3 this semester, that's something to celebrate. So we're
That
looking,
is.
we're
Mhm.
failing forward is what I always tell students. We're noticing what you're doing so we can do more of that. And then anything that comes in the way is what we need to figure out. So if you didn't do something, no problem. Let's figure out what came in the way so that it doesn't happen next time, or you have a tool for next time.
Yeah, definitely gaining the right tools to build their confidence.
Exactly. And a lot of that's mindset, right? They need to believe in themselves first that they can do this.
And that definitely is the step towards for them to believe in themselves, which is wonderful.
Yes. But we got to start sprinkling that in by helping them to notice what they're doing well so they can start seeing it.
I love this because I mean I can imagine if somebody like you wasn't there for them and this whole time they were always doing something wrong, how is that going to build any type of confidence? That's just going to tear you down and it's going to put up a bunch of blocks.
Yeah, and so what happens with ADHDers is the behavior is treated a lot more than the actual like quote unquote diagnosis per se, right?
Yeah.
So they're getting kicked out of the classroom, especially in the BIPOC community. We're seeing this a lot
Mhm.
where they're getting kicked out of class, they're getting suspended. So what does this do to the child's self-esteem? It harms it. They're missing class time, so they're not learning, they're falling behind. They're getting even more
Yeah.
frustrated once they return to class, right? So it's important for us as a community to really understand what people are going through to be able to provide the right supports for them. Otherwise, we can really create damage.
You can, right. I mean, because at that point they're not being included, they're being secluded. And
Exactly.
there's no learning in seclusion. There's no
Mhm.
connection at that point. So and I just can't imagine just how difficult it must be just coming being not of this country or just a different culture or being of this country but just brought up a different culture, plus you've got ADHD or other learning or what were you saying, dyslexia you mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like I can't even imagine the stress on that, really. I mean, that just really feels like we need some extra love sprinkled in there and a little more attention.
exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, because one thing's to have ADHD, but someone who has ADHD, 50% of them have another neurological like learning difference, right? And so now let's say they have dyslexia in addition to that. So now we need to treat both things. And so for teachers to really be able to recognize what this child is going through so that we can get them
Yeah.
assessed and get them the right accommodations and support is so important.
So what about dyslexia? I've heard that sometimes that's not a real thing, but here's for me it was a real thing. I was a straight A student my whole life except math. And it
Mhm.
just seemed to me numbers for me, it's like 3 2 1 was 1 3 2. It was like these numbers were kind of
Yeah,
scrambled for me all the time, like growing up. And all through college, all through university, it was the same thing. From the time I was a kid, I was like, I didn't understand how I can be a straight A student in all topics except numbers. And
yeah,
then when I went to school, I started hearing that, oh, dyslexia wasn't a real thing. And I was like, wait a minute, what? It was a real thing for me, and so I don't know what's your opinion on that? Because even to this day, I'm still even in my 40s now. I'm like, I want a math book to see if I can do it now, because of all the
yeah,
trauma and all the pain that I was so many tears growing up and
right,
tutors. I couldn't understand why numbers didn't make sense to me. It was a whole other language.
right. No, so yeah. So there's dyslexia, which is for letters, which is for reading, right? Comprehending, decoding, reading fluency. And then there's dyscalculia, which is the number part of it, right?
Oh wow, I was
Yeah.
confused.
It close though. So dyscalculia, they exist like 100%. These diagnoses exist. It's just how the brain is wired, right? Different wired. They develop a different approach to teaching. So this has nothing to do with the child's ability to learn, right? They can learn. They just need a different approach to teaching than the cookie cutter way that's taught in the classroom, right? So children with this brain, they need hands-on like sensory input. So for example, a number 8 and a 5 to someone who has dyslexia means the same thing. They're just memorizing. They have no idea what the magnitude of a 5 versus an 8 is, right?
Right.
Yeah, and multiplication, like forget the
Yeah,
conceptual understanding. They're just trying to memorize facts to get to the next grade or test, right?
exactly.
Um, but that's when, educational therapy comes in because we teach students how to construct and build the math. So we're actually working with blocks, like, hands-on blocks so that they can see, how 4 times 2 is related to 2 times 8, right? So they can see how the relationship between math, the magnitude of the numbers, how things are connected. So they can start, instead of seeing every concept as like a separate entity where they're memorizing, they can start to conceptually understand it and problem solve.
Wow. I love this. I wish I would have had this. I can't even tell you how many times I cried. Like, oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
and it brings a ton of anxiety.
Yeah. Oh
Math
yeah.
anxiety is a serious thing.
It really is. And I love the way you described it right now because that's what it was to me, like individual concepts that I had to memorize.
Hmm.
I was like,
And
holy
that's when it's okay, a lot of kids get through memorizing up until about 4th grade. And then that's when we see them really struggle because now it's much more abstract. We're working with
yeah.
fractions, multi-step equations, right? And so now the memorizing is too hard. And so now, dump the negatives in there, we've lost them. They're like, what is this?
That's actually where it started for me. I think it was about the 5th grade where it just got so I was like, math was fine up until about 5th grade, and it was the same negative and stuff. I was like, hold on, what's going on now? And it just
Exactly.
that's really amazing, and I wonder if like how many other people struggle with this, and had they had the proper education or the understanding, like how much more they could thrive. Because for me, I mean, what it was for me, I wanted to go to medical school and be a surgeon or a different type of MD. And I remember when I got into psychology, I mean, lo and behold, I love psychology and I love teaching it. But back then, the reason why I had kind of defaulted to psychology was because I didn't have to be good at math. I was like, well, I could still be a doctor and I don't have to worry about, all these crazy equations. But I mean, the universe is gonna align you to where you're supposed to be. I love
Right.
being where I'm at right now, but I also know that it was my intimidation with math to not push myself towards doing, what other doctors do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really incredible. So what you're doing is you're opening up the path and the journey for other people to be able to expand their education and their future. This is beautiful that you're doing this.
Thank you so much. It's really rewarding. I really love it.
What do you love the most about this?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things I love. So there are students that have been with me for, the goal is to really for them not to need me anymore. That's when this child doesn't need me anymore, I've done a great job, right? Like they're independent, they're functioning on their own, and they've got it. But I have students who have been with me for about 6 years but they're not ready yet. We're not there yet, right? And I think just growing, seeing them grow, the relationships I have with the families, seeing how the child starts transforming is like that really warms my heart because when you see this child start really believing in themselves or telling, using the tools and strategies without anyone looking, really coming out of their shell. I'm just blown away by it and so inspired by them because it's not easy and I know it's not, but they're doing it.
Can't
Um,
imagine how challenging it'll be too when you are finally they're able to go off on their own and take the training wheels off. I
I
can't imagine
cry
that.
whenever like we have
Yeah,
students
I would
graduating
too.
from college. Yeah. And I feel like, obviously they're doing all the hard work, but because I've known them all this time, I feel so connected to them that it's just, yeah, it's really special.
Well, this is really beautiful work that you're doing here. This is
Thank
amazing. And I can
you.
also imagine that it's helping you with everything that you've gone through, or even how to strategize yourself whenever you have some type of block.
Oh, 100%. Because yeah, I always think like, what would I tell one of my students if they were me right now, right? Like, how are
Yeah.
they going to move past this? So no, it's helped me in so many ways as well.
And also, I can imagine that the way that you integrate your educational therapy evolves with time. It starts to change, and you just kind of start to add things or take things away because now you've seen what's helped and what hasn't helped.
Yeah, so that's when I started blending the motivational interviewing techniques because that's super helpful for teenagers and young adults. While I was trying to figure out a way, well, how do I still keep the ed therapy but blend motivational interviewing in here? And I think that approach with, coaching has been super helpful because the kids don't push back. They really embrace the work. And then that trust, the relationship starts to form. And once the trust rapport is there, these kids like they hit go, right? And then they start experiencing and witnessing the change, which is what motivates them. Nothing will motivate us like success.
Right. And for those that are not familiar with motivational interviewing, how can you describe that?
So it's a way of, there are different you can get really technical about it, but in simple terms, it's really a way for us to empathize with people and ask them questions without telling them what to do, right? So we're really not tied to an outcome. We're really just asking questions so that the person can get to an outcome. So oftentimes we're in ambivalent state, right? All of us have ambivalence. So it's like, oh, I could work out, I should work out, but right now I don't feel like it. Right. And
Yeah.
so motivational interviewing is going to help you it's going to help you choose a path, basically. Like, what do you actually want to do? And so as their coach, you know, they could take a AP course. They don't want to take the AP course. So through questioning, we uncover their reasons, what's tied to their values, and that's going to help them drive their decision. And so, some students, then they can pick their course of action, their path, and be okay with telling others what it is and why they're doing this and feel really confident about it. So we take them out of the ambivalence per se.
Yeah, and give them their own personal power.
Exactly. And right, we're raising awareness as to why they're behaving and doing what they're doing.
This is really wonderful. Awesome. Oh my goodness, Jenny Drennan, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of your incredible wisdom. I mean, your light and everything that you're doing for yourself and for others and for children and everybody around you and for our community. This is really amazing. I'm
No,
certain that you're
thank
going to be
you.
inspiring people, and also you're going to be inspiring those that you help to do the same thing. I mean, and choose a path. And I can only imagine that your light is gonna help other people light up as well. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
Well, thank you for giving me the space. This was wonderful. It was so nice to meet you and connect with you, and for the work that you're doing as well. Your story
Thank
is just
you.
as inspiring, much more inspiring. So thank you for
Oh, it's all equally
it's the
inspiring. We're all collectively
same.
all made of the same stuff, which is love. And so I've got a poem to share here for you.
Amazing.
All right, let's do it. I don't title them. I kind of just write it out and I let it flow out. So this has no title, but is dedicated to the interview here with Jenny Drennan. In order to connect, we need to see our differences as harmony. For it is in our differences where we can create different colors, different outcomes, and different roads to take. Although our path on the road may be different, it still leads to a journey. Connection is where the heart is, and that is our destination. So thank you.
That's beautiful. That
Thank
is
you.
lovely. Thank you for writing that.
Sure. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks so much for sharing your energy. Where can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners find you and get a hold of you?
Yeah, if anyone has questions, happy to help or email me. But our website is WeThriveLearning.com, and we have a free parent Facebook group. So if parents want any tips on ADHD and supporting their children with neurodiverse children, they can join our Facebook book, which is found on our website too.
Jenny Drennan, everybody, educational therapist, ADHD, and executive student coach here on A Little Less Fear podcast. Such a blessing to connect with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Bye, Lino.
Goodbye. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to A Little Less Fear podcast. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends and your family about A Little Less Fear podcast. And if you are interested in being on my show, feel free to leave me an email at alittlelessfear@gmail.com. Or if you have any questions or comments and you also want to leave me an additional message, you can also do so from my website, leaving an inquiry at www.alittlelessfear.com. You can get a copy of my book on Amazon, Amazon Kindle, and Amazon Kindle Unlimited, also titled A Little Less Fear. And thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate all the support. Leave me a review if you get a chance. I love to receive feedback, questions, and comments. And any way that I can be of support to you, please let me know. Thank you so much. I love you. Wishing you love, light, happiness, and many blessings your way.